China emits a lot of carbon because it's a manufacturing center for the whole world. Should China be paying the carbon tax, or the consumers of these products be paying the carbon tax?
So could you say a few words on how to reform these global financial institutions or institutions of development like World Bank, IMF, so that they can also contribute to common prosperity worldwide?
Thank you so much, Professor. Yes, the World Bank, IMF, these institutions were created after the Second World War. Professor, you know, the institutions created at that time were under the hegemony of a country, and the principles were also dominated in that sense, the capitalism. And it is really unfortunate and that hardly any country, and you wrote in this book, China Web, that looking around the world, you don't see any country has developed from underdevelopment with these policies. So I think we need a new kind of financial mechanism. New development bank has been recently established in Shanghai, and I have some articles on Green Climate Fund. Actually, you know that we need a new kind of financial mechanism to help the developing countries to develop, especially under the dictate of this green growth. Because you know, if we are obliged to produce energy from the green sources, the gap between the fossil fuel and green energy, it is huge. So why should a country like Bangladesh, which has no contribution so far in climate change, has to pay this, and which is really underdeveloped? Chris, I will ask you, like, for every step of development, for every stone of development, you need energy, source of energy. Like every bricks need production of energy. So how you create generate this energy? Like Bangladesh needs now 25,000 megawatt, we need 60,000 megawatt of electricity. And how will you generate this? If it costs $1 from fossil fuel, and if it costs $3 from green sources, who will pay this $2? Who will pay this? And how can the countries like Bangladesh can be in the can be on board for common prosperity? How can the countries like Bangladesh? At least we don't want any aid. We want to minimize the gap. So if the gap, like if it is $1 for fossil fuel and $3 for green fuel, so this the gap of $2 has to be compensated. This is justice. This is called justice. Has to be compensated by a financial mechanism. So the Green Climate Fund has been established in 2013, but that is not also helping in that way. That is basically facilitating mitigation. So I think that the global aviation industry and other industries which are emitting carbon dioxide gas, that has to be taxed, and the tax generated from that has to be compensated for the countries like Bangladesh. That kind of principle needs to be initiated so that the countries like underdeveloped countries can really catch up in the development stride. Otherwise, these policies will only hinder the development of the countries. We will say that we are making the principle to help you to develop, ultimately it does not help, actually it hinders, it goes opposite. So a financial mechanism needs to be developed to minimize this gap of the cost of production of energy. So this is very fundamental question for development of the developing countries. There should be more justice, like the aviation industry and other industries which are producing more carbon dioxide has to minimize this gap of fossil fuel and the green energy for the countries like Bangladesh, which are not producing carbon dioxide at this moment. 0.47 ton per capita in Bangladesh, 7 ton per capita in China, 15 ton per capita in USA. So why should be this much of difference of carbon dioxide production? We should be allowed to be like 10 tons per capita. We are not doing this, but still we are obliged to follow this, and we cannot develop. And this is not, there was no talk about this in Glasgow. There was no talk about this justice things in global forums. So the developed countries, the people should know this more, that developing countries cannot develop in this way. We are most affected country, one of the most affected country, Bangladesh. We did not create this problem, and we are the most affected country. we don't emit carbon dioxide gas. So we are not asking about the aid, we are asking the justice, and why should we pay more now while we are not polluting this carbon dioxide gas. So the Green Climate Fund and New Development Bank all should come up how to find a way how to minimize this gap of electricity production for the countries like which are very much underdeveloped still now. And also China has adopted just few months back the carbon trading system. As Professor Zhang Wei said, that the income disparity among the states in China is very high. So those states which has more industries and which produce more carbon dioxide are more prosperous. So emission trading means that those states which are producing more carbon will be taxed more. China is utilize this scope to minimize the gap among the states and improve the inequality. So this Paris Agreement is a great opportunity, and I am confident that China will attain it, this income disparity.
I would just add two minor points. One, no one has the right to tell developing countries in Africa and the subcontinent, for example, that sorry, you're not getting any more electricity. No one has the right. It's human rights, basic human rights for them to be able to seek development and improvement of their lives. And it's absolutely critical that the developed countries have to take it more seriously. Look at what happened at the pandemic. There are developed countries which held on to vaccines until they expired instead of passing them on to African countries. With that type of attitude, the earth is over, it's finished. Second, carbon footprint. China emits a lot of carbon because it's a manufacturing center for the whole world. Should China be paying the carbon tax, or the consumers of these products be paying the carbon tax? Or there should be some sort of sharing. This is something that I think only to be fair, because Chinese production of household products, basic goods, shipped all over the world, are being consumed and therefore carbon emitted actually all over the world.
Thank you. As we read in the Western media, there is a lot of coverage concerning this, common prosperity, but it's portrayed as a kind of suppression against tech giants and compel them to make contributions to so-called common prosperity. The story of Alibaba and Tencent, etc., described in a negative way. What's your take, your comment on that kind of accusation?
I think this comes directly to the question of monopolies, because Alibaba was adopting a number of measures forcing companies to choose between Alibaba and others. If you sold things on Alibaba, you're not allowed to sell elsewhere. This is creation of monopolies, which creates inefficiencies and it imposes a higher cost on the consumer. And these are precisely the things which I think will be very damaging to common prosperity in the long term. And the second part is, we don't want to be in the situation like in America 20 years from now, whereby 55,000 homeless live on the streets while 100 people have enough money to burn for 100 generations, not 10 generations, 100, 200 generations. Is that a society we want to be proud of? No, we don't want that type of society to occur. And the rampant march of capital is so dangerous for a country like China that I think it has to be controlled and restricted. But this is not stopping investors coming into China, because on a global basis, I think the Chinese growth and the management of the economy, the governance is far beyond or superior to any other developed country or any other country, period. And the yield and the return on investment continues to be, on a relative basis, much better than others. And the management of the pandemic has also been far superior. So in terms of overall governance, I don't think investors are holding back at all. I see investors actually coming in, including a lot of my co-investors on projects.
Thank you for this very important answer. But there is another accusation, which is again portraying China's policy for common prosperity as a kind of deliberate strategy to decouple with the United States, to have a kind of Chinese powerful manufacturing sectors decoupled from United States in the name of common prosperity, in the name of this so-called internal circulation. Do you see this kind of accusation reasonable or fallacy, whatever?
I have to say, who started the whole decoupling process? It was Donald Trump and the trade war, decoupling from China. This is typical hypocrisy from Western press. They started something, they wanted to decouple from China, and discovered they cannot decouple from China, and discovered that the whole manufacturing basis in the US has become such that they're dependent more on China than anything else. So now China is being accused of wanting to decouple from the West. I don't think that will happen. China is the major trading partner of over 120 countries, and that includes many countries in Europe, the entire EU for that matter, and all of Southeast Asia. What we have in Asia is, I think, a very interesting thing. The shift from the West to the East is not the shift from West to China, it's to Asia overall. It's a modern supply chain that is so sophisticated and is the best in human history. And that is Asia with China at its core. And that is very pragmatic and very realistic. There's no disengagement. Disengagement from China cannot be, because look at our CEP that was just implemented, which I think will be very substantial. And I try to suggest to my friends in Europe, EU should join our CEP.